Welcome back.
Welcome back, family. I'm Renee,
I'm Kyrie.
and I want to say thank you once again to all of our longtime subscribers to hear us out,
hmm
and to our new listeners. Make sure to hit subscribe so that you can continue to get notifications. And thank you for hearing us out.
Thank you. And on this episode of Hear Us Out, we are going to start with another book.
Yes, we are,
hmm
and I will tell you that in choosing this particular book for this time, it's a book that's near and dear to me. And I will admit that I do have some, I'm going to say I'm anxious, I guess, a little nervous about
hmm
it because it is so personal, personal for me. I love, W.E.B. Du Bois
hmm
and the Souls of Black Folk as well,
Which is what we will be
which
reading.
which we will be reading. So if you do not have a copy of the book, the local library may have it. You could definitely, get a PDF of it. And if
hmm
you want to, please, follow along, with us as we delve into this book. And so I'm excited about, reading it because I think that this particular work will lend itself to the conversations that we've been having.
Well, that's what it's been very good at the whole time.
Right.
We've been waiting for it to become obsolete, but yet it just continues to be as relevant as it ever was in 1903 when he
Right.
wrote it.
And I remember, when you were much, younger,
Yeah, the first time I
this was,
actually tried to read this book was in
yeah,
like the fourth grade.
for the fifth, right.
And I was like, I don't really
You're like,
understand all of this.
right, because I gave it to you,
No, I picked it out.
you picked it out to read? Oh,
Yeah, I was
because
just
I
like,
had because
yeah,
I had,
you had this, because at school you had this big old library, like all these
uh-huh,
books.
right,
And I remember I picked out something with Spider Man on it,
uh-huh,
and then I had picked out the
uh-huh,
actual copy that I'm holding in my hand right now,
uh-huh,
and I had read it,
mm-hmm,
but I didn't read all of it. I read
right,
some of it. And I remember
uh-huh,
talking to you and being like, I don't really understand a lot of what's being said here.
uh-huh,
And then you were like, don't worry, you will. At a
right.
later date, we will
Yeah,
revisit
that's right. We
this.
will revisit, right.
It's fine. And we did,
Uh-huh,
during our
homeschooling,
homeschooling.
uh-huh.
And yeah,
Yeah, we went, page paragraph, page for page, because when I, at the time, and I still do this now, that, when we read, I like to stop and have,
yeah,
great
that's,
discussions and things
so
like
yeah.
that. So,
So before we begin, tell me why, why this book? Why Du Bois? Why now?
why now?
All those,
Oh,
all those
just,
things.
just,
It's
just the
all
whole
kind of
general,
the
the whole
same.
general.
Yeah.
Okay, I consider W.E.B. Du Bois
hmm
to be to be probably the greatest thinker, the greatest sociologist ever,
hmm
ever, ever. Okay, and and I think I've mentioned over the years that he is a graduate of Harvard, obviously, and in Harvard they mentioned that the top three graduates ever, right? Sorry, I don't know who the other two guys are.
You just knew W.E.B. Du Bois there.
W.E.B. Du Bois is the other is
Yeah.
the other one. I don't you know, and his story, the man that he is, the thinker he is, the teacher he is, and that he seems always right.
hmm
Even when you don't want him to be, he is. And then people like to get into the personality and the myth, that type of stuff. But I always say that you get into those things when you can't refute him in his work. You go into the name calling and those
hmm
type of things. But I think his
So what is so controversial about W.E.B. Du Bois?
well, the controversy, well, they tend to be multi-layered,
No.
right? You know, W.E.B. Du Bois, they always, they pin him against a Booker T. Washington, or they
hmm
pin him against, Marcus Garvey,
hmm
right? And looking at and keeping in the context of the time and the man that he was, putting him against Booker T. Washington, because that's what we're going to
That's what
really,
Silver Black folks where it
right,
comes from.
comes from, is that Booker T. Washington was not W.E.B. Du Bois' enemy,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And I think, with this new advent of the internet and all of this stuff, we want to try to make W.E.B.
Yeah, things with how people think now,
Mm-hmm.
it's hard to understand that someone could be critical of an ideal, critical of a person,
Mm-hmm.
yet not be, an enemy, not be,
Yeah.
actively, trying to destroy,
Right.
whomever. You can criticize,
Right.
you can be critical,
Mm-hmm.
but that doesn't necessarily make someone your enemy.
And your enemy, correct. And that's the tenor that I seen that seems prevalent now. But back then, and for many years, I mean, because I wasn't around in 1903,
Mm-hmm.
but just from my early understanding and early learnings, they weren't enemies. They saw things differently, and that comes from, I think, just who they were as people. W.E.B. Du Bois was from Massachusetts.
Mm-hmm.
Booker T. Washington is from Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
Booker T. Washington was born into enslavement.
Mm-hmm.
W.E.B. Du Bois was not.
Was born during
He,
emancipation.
yes, I think they're like a 10 or 13-year age gap.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think if I remember correctly, Booker T. Washington was born like in the 1850s. Okay? And W.E.B. Du Bois was born like in the 1860s. Okay? So even just knowing that, you know, it will produce, the kind of men that they were.
Mm-hmm.
And all of the other, and all of the other things that tend to factor into the conversation is that W.E.B. Du Bois is, I'm gonna say, challenging the thinking of someone who was 10 years older,
Mm-hmm. And who was born into slavery.
born in enslavement, and challenging that the notion of what what Booker T. Washington is trying to
So,
say
what
doesn't make
is that notion? Because that is very important to understanding the Soldier Black folks.
that the separate but equal.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Because
And the bootstrap theory.
because like you said, this was written in 1903, right?
Right.
And
And
the Atlanta Compromise, which
by Booker
was
T.
Booker T.
Washington.
Washington's big speech
Mm-hmm.
at the time, was like in
One.
1901.
Right.
Yeah.
And I remember mentioning and talking is that it it feels as if that as Booker T. Washington was saying his speech, that W.E.B. Du Bois was writing this book.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because the book was published in 1903.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean that it was written in 1903.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying? So, that's just the final
So,
of the publishing.
what exactly is the Atlanta Compromise about? What is it Booker T. Washington that said that you could say started W.E.B. Du Bois on this?
There are many there are many things, but the big thing is that it took the tone and the tenor that black people have to raise themselves up by their bootstraps, that we can be separate, separate as the five fingers,
Mm-hmm.
right? But then, when I guess in the case of security or whatever, then we would come together,
Mm.
And as
There is,
American,
yeah.
and that term, and that
There
just
is one part of the Atlanta, because I remember when we read, because we read Booker T.
Washington's
Washington's
from
book
slavery.
Up from Slavery,
Mm-hmm.
and the Atlanta Compromise in its entirety is
Right.
in that book,
Mm-hmm.
and there was one part in particular
Uh huh.
that is like burned into my mind.
Okay.
When Booker T. Washington was saying that the white man won't respect, won't respect you
Yeah.
until you dress like the white
Right.
man, and you talk like the white
Uh-huh.
man, and you
It's
walk
as
like,
a matter of fact,
you know.
it is the meme that you all take completely out of context. It's this meme that always goes wrong, and you all are making and it seems as if Booker T. Washington is being disparaging towards white men, and he's not.
He's giving us a plate, like
He's giving us a play. You have to do these things in order.
It's not until you walk like,
Yeah, until you walk like him and learn
I
his
remember
history and do
reading
this
that,
right.
being like,
Are you serious? Nah.
this is what someone was saying. Like really nothing is new.
Right.
This is what someone was saying in 1901, at the turn of the century.
That's right. That you have to think, study, be like the white man.
And it won't be until you. And it's like,
right.
There's this I forget, but there's this axiom.
Mm-hmm.
There's this axiom in the it comes from slaves. I don't know. I don't necessarily know who exactly said it, but it was just this thing where there's no such thing as a good nigga.
That's right. right. Right.
Right. So when you're on the plantation,
that's right.
It doesn't matter if you follow the rules.
That's
or if
right.
You don't follow the rules.
That's right.
It doesn't matter if you behave or you misbehave, whatever that may mean.
That's right.
There's no such thing.
Right. There's no such thing. Right.
You can act like you can dress and walk and do whatever you want.
Right.
It's not you're not a good nigga. I'm sorry, Booker T.
Yeah, exactly.
You're not.
And so
it's unattainable.
It's unattainable, and that's the thing that gets me because we think of W.E.B. Du Bois as the intellectual, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because he's the HBCU graduate, elite university graduate,
and how he writes, how he presents his ideas.
Exactly, right. Mm-hmm. That he is the one that you would think would tell you to study the Greeks and the Romans and the to act their way, talk their way, so that you can advance. No, it was Booker T. Washington. The one that folks tend to pride themselves over, as the more down to earth, all about the economics and being separate and all of those things. No, that wasn't Booker T. Washington at all. And if you read Up from Slavery, when he made those statements after, people were so hot.
And it's so livid. A lot of like little snide comments in that book as well.
Because especially about
the chapter after that is when he said he went on a trip to Europe after the Atlanta Compromise,
right?
And he was, and I think he just mentions in passing that he was talking with somebody on the boat about the uselessness of the black church,
right?
Which was during that time one of the fixtures of the black community that allowed people to move and to and to galvanize. He feel like, we shouldn't be doing, like just this not like
he made a lot of side remarks throughout.
And then there's the other part where he talked about where he went to like a sharecropper's house.
Yes.
How he was like
they only had one skillet. No, they only had one skillet. Like what are you talking about?
And like, why are they wasting their money on this stuff? And it's like, do you not know
that their sharecropping works?
Like if the white man, whom they're sharecropping for, goes to their house and sees them living in detritus, how they actually should be living, then they're going to be cut off,
right?
Because they're not being appreciative. They're not showing. You would think that someone shouldn't have to explain this to you,
Booker T. Washington,
but that's what Du Bois.
That's what Du Bois. Right. That's what he's responding to, and I think a lot of that gets lost because you keep saying that you read.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I read this. I can tell by how you're responding that you're not being truthful in your statement.
What I really like about Souls of Black Folk is how it has that Dune quality. Like I said, where it becomes truer, more true than whatever it's reflecting.
Mm-hmm.
This Souls of Black Folks has outclassed and outlasted the message of From Slavery.
Oh, because definitely. Yes.
It becomes about something greater than just
attaining,
refuting an idea.
Mm-hmm.
a complete expose on the type of like cultural and sociological mentality that you have to have
Mm-hmm.
if when you are existing
In something like this.
as a
Right.
black person
Mm-hmm.
in America.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, and he's talking about like I said, 1903.
Right.
You would think by now this would be obsolete,
But it's not.
but it's not.
Right.
It's still the same dichotomy,
Mm-hmm.
still the same razor's edge that you're walking.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and there are still people, who think that if you just do this and you just
Right.
do that, it's going to work out for you.
Right.
And it's like it. That's the thing. Like when you don't want, like you say, when you
Don't want to learn. Right.
don't want it to be correct.
That's right. You don't
You
want to
don't
learn
want to read something like
this. Mm-hmm.
and be able to sympathize
Mm-hmm.
and empathize
Mm-hmm.
and understand this.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said before, this should be entirely alien to me.
Right.
I shouldn't be able to understand
this.
I
Right.
was born in 1998.
Mm-hmm.
I shouldn't be able to, empathize and understand with this. I should
Mm-hmm.
be like, I don't know what this man is
Yeah, what is he talking about? Right.
right? And for a time, I was like, I didn't understand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I could get you not understanding it in the fourth grade.
In the fourth grade,
Right.
I was young there, but it wasn't too long after that.
Yeah, that's true. That is correct. Because
It
when
wasn't
we
too long
started,
after
we started homeschooling.
where it was
That's
like
right.
when because at that time you're not really conscious
Mm-hmm.
of being black as a social construct,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right.
But once you start to understand the systemic, elements
Mm-hmm.
of your skin color,
Mm-hmm.
right? When you actually begin to start to ask those questions, because I read it before I even had them,
Right.
but when you actually start to ask them
Mm-hmm.
and you start to really analyze,
Mm-hmm.
what does this mean in this world? What
Right.
does it mean to be black in America
Mm-hmm.
in this context? What does that mean? What does that feel like?
Mm-hmm.
It I should not read a book from
1903.
and
That's
be
right.
like,
That's what it is.
that's what it feels like.
You
But I do.
Mm-hmm.
And it is still as relevant, still as poignant,
Mm-hmm.
today as it has ever been.
And look, if
And
you know anything about W.E.B Du Bois, and there are those, like I say, oh yeah, like you just want him to be so wrong. You just, but he's right. And there is this this historian. His name was Harold Cruz, and I would say that he's probably the most. He's one of the most critical, authors, writers, Black history.
Mm-hmm.
He had to capitulate that W.E.B Du Bois was right. It seems that it pulled it pulled everything out of him to finally admit to that. Not that he didn't want to, but if you were to read Crisis of the Negro of the Crisis of the Negro Intellectual, right? That's what this is that you just want him to be, but just wanting it, that's not how this works. And we know the deep thought analysis and how W.E.B Du Bois understands research, right? Like you said, this was published in 1903. Even when we read it, it should have been something like, what is he talking about? But it was not. And it won't be, because your action shows otherwise.
Yeah, like it should have been a matter of historical precedent.
Mm-hmm.
It should have been a look back.
Right.
But it should not have been a lens that you can use to understand your current predicament. And since the question of race, it's never far from our minds. I mean, but Black people's minds, it can't be.
Right.
But it is at the forefront of America's thinking right now because of everything that has been transpiring. This seems like a very good time to revisit this work.
And so,
to begin with, we want to, because we haven't read too far into it. We haven't read anything at all yet.
Right.
This is, like I say,
we wanted to
really set the basis for it, like we always do.
Right.
But there is the forethought
Yes,
which is
Lord.
like a few paragraphs long, like a
Mm-hmm.
page maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And we thought that here would be the best place to just read this out,
Mm-hmm.
and nothing is going to be able to better set the tenor, set the basis for what this is than W.E.B. Du Bois, W.E.B. Du Bois himself. So,
Here we
yeah.
go. The forethought. Herein lie buried many things which, if read with patience, may show the strange meaning of being black here at the dawning of the 20th century. This meaning is not without interest to you, gentle reader, for the problem of the 20th century is the problem of the color line. I pray you then receive my little book in all charity, studying my words with me, forgiving mistake, and foible forsake of the faith and patience and passion that is in me, and seeking the grain of truth hidden there. I'm going to stop here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to stop here because I remember mentioning to you over many years, and even in the previous episode, right, that slave narratives, they, before you get into the reading of the narrative itself,
Mm-hmm.
they tend to have a forethought or
Preface.
or preface.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and they tell you, all these different, and I know that you're not going to believe me.
Mm-hmm.
I know that you're not going to believe me because who believes you? So that's basically the term.
Mm-hmm.
And so what you have here is W.E.B. Du Bois writing the souls of black folk in that same sort of format of a slave narrative.
Mm-hmm.
This introduction, this paragraph right here, it sets the tone. It lets you know where he is coming from, what the problem is, and how you may even think it's a mistake. They see even mentioning it.
He's setting the basis by saying this is a book written by a man, by a person,
That's right.
right? There may be mistakes
Mistakes.
in
Mm-hmm.
here. There may be, missayings and misgivings, but give him the benefit
Benefit
of
of
the
the
doubt.
doubt.
Understand where it's coming from. Like I
Mm-hmm.
said, he's addressing the color line.
Right.
He's exposing this, this new train of thought, this new
Mm-hmm.
perspective, to the wider world.
Mm-hmm.
It will not be perfect.
Right.
Nothing, it's not
Nothing
meant to
is
be.
right.
But just give him the benefit of the doubt and understand what he's trying to expose here.
Mm-hmm.
Because there is no, like we said, there's no right way to say it, no right way to put it.
Mm-hmm.
This is his way. And if you can, for that moment, empathize
Guys, with
enough
that's right.
to look at it in this perspective, you may be able to really understand, get
Mm-hmm.
to, to the heart, the truth of what he's actually trying to
Right.
say.
Try to understand what I'm saying here.
Mm-hmm.
Do that first. If you could do that,
And just come in with that basis.
come in with
Come
that
in with
basis.
that
Right.
basis.
Okay. I have sought here to sketch, in vague, uncertain outline, the spiritual world in which 10,000 Americans live and strive. First, in 2 chapters, I have tried to show what emancipation meant to them and what was its aftermath. And in a third chapter, I have pointed out the slow rise of personal leadership and criticized candidly the leader who bears the chief burden of his race today. That would be Booker T. Washington. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Then, in 2 other chapters, I have sketched in, in swift outline the two worlds within and without the veil, and thus have come to the central problem of training men for life. Venturing now into deeper detail, I have in 2 chapters studied the struggles of the massed millions of the black peasantry, and in another have sought to make clear the present relations of the sons of masters and man. Leaving, then, the white world, I have stepped within the veil, raising it that you may view faintly its deeper recesses, the meaning of its religion, the passions of its human sorrow, and the struggle of its greater souls. All this I have ended with a tale twice told by seldom written, and a chapter of song. Let me stop here.
Mm-hmm.
What W.E.B. Du Bois doing here is telling you where the depths that he has gone to retrieve and bring back this to us, this information, this study. Okay, he has gone into the lion's den, places that many of us cannot go into.
Oh, or we can't empathize with.
True enough.
Or we a lot of this context
Mm-hmm.
is one that we were born with.
Mm-hmm.
Is one that we were born into.
Right.
So it's hard to be able to truly see the forest through the trees when
Mm-hmm.
you're in it,
Right.
right? To be able to discern and point out things.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the black experience is intuitive. You
Right.
just
You
go
just know it.
through
Right.
it.
Mm-hmm. You go through it and you know it.
Because
That's right.
life has its own momentum, and
Mm-hmm.
rarely do you get the opportunity to just stop and think
Mm-hmm.
and consider what is happening to you,
Mm-hmm.
and the choices that you're presented with.
Mm-hmm.
But Du Bois, as a student of history, as a purveyor of it,
Mm-hmm.
his life's work is to have that perspective,
Right.
is to have that consideration,
Mm-hmm.
and to be able to exist empathetically in that context, to
Mm-hmm.
be able to see the forest through the
Trees.
trees.
That's right.
That's what he has lived for, and that's what he has done. Like I said, he's
That is his
pointed
work.
out
Right.
all the
Mm-hmm.
he's laid it out in all these different chapters, what he's going to talk about and why he's going to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And really just laying out the impossibility of the black experience, or what he calls, the veil, like the
Mm-hmm.
contradiction,
Right.
the extreme dichotomy
Mm-hmm. What
that
is
we all
hidden?
have to exist
Right. What we hide, what we feel we have to hide,
in.
because we wear the mask. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
What we have to hide and what we have to show. Okay. In our showing, that's where we tell the truth. We have to tell the truth. We cannot lie about our situation. We cannot lie and say that in order for us to succeed or whatever is that we have to study the white man's history and wear the white man's clothes.
Mm-hmm.
We cannot do that. We know that is not
It's impossible.
It's impossible.
There's no such thing.
Yeah, you can't walk that line, because the problem of the 20th century is the problem of the color line.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot do that. You cannot have. That's not telling the truth. You have to be honest about this.
Mm-hmm.
And so when he comes from under that veil, that's what he's doing. But he has to be in the fray and out the fray.
He has to be in it and yet have enough wherewithal to see outside.
That's right.
Because there's no other place for W.E.B Du Bois to exist. Remember, he is a black man.
Right.
He can't pick and choose when and when not he's existing in this world.
That's right.
And
and understand that that he exists as a black man. He never. There's no hiding from it. There's no I am walking with it.
Mm-hmm.
I am walking with it. And yes, I may not have been born a slave in the South.
Mm-hmm. But he is writing a slave narrative.
And I am a black man nonetheless.
Mm-hmm. So this is a
right.
slave. I mean, this is a man who has never been a slave, writing a book in the tenor of a slave narrative.
And that's done intentionally, because if you read Up From Slavery by Booker T. like I told you, I highly recommend that every Pan-Africanist, black consciousness, I'm blackity black, everything. I highly recommend that you read Up From Slavery by Booker T. Washington. Check out the title. The title alone should tell you everything you need to know about what it is that you're going to engage in, if you so choose to do it that way, and not looking to just respond.
Engage.
Yeah, I'm just saying. Yeah, just engage.
No, when we read Booker T. Washington, we didn't go in it to try to undercut or discount.
That's what I'm saying. Just immerse yourself in this.
Hear him out.
Hear what he says. Understand that it's an autobiography and not a slave narrative for a reason. And I'm gonna leave it like that. If you just read
A
it,
slave who wrote an autobiography,
okay?
and a man who's never been a slave,
Right. Who's right?
who's writing a slave
This
narrative.
is why it's set up as it's like we know we know who W.E.B. Du Bois is paying homage to already just by how it's set.
Yeah.
And he does that intentionally
Mm-hmm.
because of course we know that he's going to be critical and he's responding to Booker T. Washington. So
Yeah.
he's intentional
And
and he's intentional in his delivery of in this way. That's what I'm
mm-hmm.
saying. Huh? Some of these thoughts of mine have seen the light before in other guise. For kindly consenting to their republication here in altered and extended form, I must thank the publishers at the Atlantic Monthly, The World's Work, The Dial, The New World, and the Annals of American Academy of Political and Social Science. Before each chapter, as now printed, stands a bar of the sorrow songs, some echo of haunting melody from the only American music which welled up from black souls in the dark past. And finally, need I add that I who speak here am bone of the bone and flesh of the flesh of them that live within the veil.
Mm.
This was in Atlanta,
Yeah.
February 1st, 1903. Okay? And so understand that his dispute with Booker T. Washington, you know, it's not in the bone. He is flesh and flesh with Booker T. Washington. Okay? There is a disagreement here. I don't hate Booker T. Washington.
And when we were pre-reading this,
Right?
I was confused by
Mm-hmm.
that last
Uh-huh.
sentence on why it was a statement. It's a statement,
Right.
but it ends in a question mark.
I always that even though he's asking a question, and I
Yeah,
say that he's
but it
making a
was it
statement
was
here.
always well, what is he asking for?
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking like, let's just read the sentence again.
Right.
And finally, need I add that I who speak here am bone of the bone and flesh of the flesh of them that live within the veil.
Mm-hmm.
You
That's
know,
us, right?
yeah. So
That's us,
in this, because the entire time, so far,
right?
it's been as if W.E.B. Du Bois has been trying to lay the groundwork on why it's okay for him
That's
to
right.
speak on this.
That's right.
Right? I said he's not a slave.
Mm-hmm.
He's never been a slave yet. He's writing a slave narrative.
Mm-hmm.
And at the very beginning, he's talking about give me the benefit of the doubt. Just
Mm-hmm.
allow me to say this.
Mm-hmm.
Allow me the foibles if they are to come.
Mm-hmm.
Just come with an open mind and hear me out, type
Mm-hmm.
thing. Right? He's saying all of this. Just the whole tenor
Right.
is please just listen to
To
me
me,
for a
right.
moment. Right?
And
And
that
at the
is
very end,
and that's exactly the tenor of those of I always use Oladiah Equino's
mm-hmm,
preface as like the prime example. That's exactly Oladiah Equino, Harriet Jacobs, Frederick Douglass, so many of those people who wrote their narratives that hear what I'm saying.
mm-hmm,
Understand what I'm saying. Please just hear me out. Empathize with me.
mm-hmm,
I'm a human being. I'm a man.
mm-hmm.
Hear me out. Hear what I'm saying. Just hear me out.
Yeah, and like I said, and in that, but in the last
Mm-hmm.
sentence, it was like, and need I add if I that I'm this,
Yeah.
and it's like, what's the question?
Mm-hmm.
What's the question? Is he questioning his own identity here?
Mm-hmm.
Is he like the whole book? The whole because we haven't even got to the book yet.
Right.
But the whole forethought,
Mm-hmm.
he's saying, I have a right to speak on this.
That's right.
I am going to speak on this. I have the right to speak on this.
Mm-hmm.
Hear me out. That's what he's saying.
Mm-hmm.
But at the very end, the way I read it the first time was like, is he questioning his own right to speak on this?
Mm-hmm.
What is his question?
Mm-hmm.
right? Because I put the emphasis on the I,
Right.
right? And finally, need I add that I who speak here am bone of the bone and flesh of the flesh of them that live within the veil.
But it's the need.
It's the need.
It's the need.
That's the question.
Mm-hmm.
Need I add this?
Right.
Right? He's not questioning himself, but he's questioning the need to even say this.
That's right.
Do I even have to tell you that I am a black man?
Right. Do we have to go through this?
So he's not questioning his identity.
No.
He's questioning the need of this forethought.
Right.
He's questioning the need for him to even say, hear me out.
Right.
Do I need anything other than the fact that I am a black man to speak on?
Yes, that's it.
I know I'm not a slave. I'm not any of this.
Right.
But I exist in this context. I am of the people who live within the veil.
That's right.
I live within the veil.
And this,
do I even need to say, do I even need to say this?
Right.
Do I even need to explain this?
Right.
Do I need to set up my credentials
right.
as a black man to be able to speak
right.
on these issues, on the matter of do I even need that? And it's like, well, seeing how how he's been remembered throughout the ages.
Apparently so.
Apparently so.
And you have folk like me, and there are many like me who are like, we are hardline W.E.B Du Bois, ride or die, ride or die. And of course, you have others, who may feel, a little, indifferently. And again, and I tend to challenge folk. I'm like, well, did you read it? Oh, I don't even have to read it. Oh, because I don't know, some foolishness that they would come up with, because you want to get into the myth building. This is the 21st century where, like I said, everyone is into the memes now. People think, memes and quick little quibs is answering or solving, issues. And like I said, like when I mentioned about when we talked about the Booker T. Washington thing, right? I'm like, that's one of the many that y'all like to put on a little meme and take it completely out of what it is that he was saying, because obviously you didn't read up from slavery. And I remember having a conversation with someone from Alabama, because I'm from Alabama. Let's do this here. Let's do this. Let's go on what
this is
on
not,
what it said.
This is not a defense of W.E.B. Du Bois.
No, he doesn't need that. As far as I'm concerned,
what this is,
he doesn't need it.
Because that forethought is like it's so good.
Yeah,
and it the very idea that someone has to set up a basis, for them to speak on something that is affecting them. Because you can't, like, this is the type of critical analysis that he's existing in, that we exist in to this day, is that you can't speak on how you feel. That's not proof enough to move anyone.
Yeah, and I think that's pretty obvious to a lot of us now. Right.
You can't just say that I feel like something's wrong. And just say this, look at this. Right. This isn't right. This is racism. This is systemic racism. You can't just say that because of what you're living in, of how you feel. No, you need to have the number. You need to have the very thing which proves unequivocally, that this is racist. You need to have that.
And understand here of the context in which all of this is coming from and coming out of. Okay. In 1903, right, we are a little over 35 years removed from enslavement. Okay? So we're like a generation or so out. Okay? At this time, you still have a number of people who are illiterate, uneducated. You have Booker T. Washington, who is the prominent face as well. Okay, he's out of that as well, right? So these are the two men, you can say, who are speaking for us.
Mm.
Okay, they're speaking for us. They're talking for us. They represent us. That type of thing.
Yeah, the
Okay,
national
right
stage.
on that platform. Okay, and so it was so critically important for W.E.B. Du Bois to understand that this is the mix that he is in. Okay, and to critically analyze not only our brother,
Mm-hmm.
but what is happening in the fervor of the country when he's particularly when he said the things that he said
Mm-hmm.
to this predominantly white audience.
Booker T. Yeah.
Yes, and what that means, not just how it made us feel, like the feeling, like
Mm-hmm.
that. Yes, that's there, but to really garner in, to really hone in, and to analyze what he is saying, and how these two great personalities are the speakers and the representatives of so many who feel that they are that they can't speak, or that
Mm-hmm.
they are voices, or that they don't have enough, or whatever. So you have to understand that we are a people who were enslaved, sharecropped, denied,
Jim
and
Crow.
Jim Crow. We know about the lynchings, and I mean, all this is what's happening here. And so,
Not even separate, but equal.
oh
Just separate.
no, yeah, definitely.
And one of the big points that is that in my mind he doesn't need to give the number. He
Right,
doesn't need to give the exact thing because it isn't an exact
exactly, right, of course.
science. That's not
Right.
that's not what this is. And when he says when he's speaking on this, who in the
Mm-hmm.
world is going to be like prove it?
Right.
When
Yeah.
like who how what in this
Mm-hmm.
in any of the works that any of the slave narratives that we've
Right.
ever read by any what is there to be disputed?
Right.
What is the why is it that this person has to find the exact thing?
And that always falls on
And it always
us.
falls
Falls
on
on
us. Yeah.
us.
Why is it that
Right. It falls on us.
they're speaking from their experience, but that's not enough.
Right.
Evidence that's not enough.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And even then, that's not enough. You can give the exact the exact fact and figure, and even then, it's not enough.
Right. It's
Right?
never enough.
And
Right.
it's like, but how can you dispute this?
Mm-hmm.
How can you dispute what he's feeling?
Mm-hmm.
You can't, so you try to rely on the thing that you can't, dispute, and that's the how someone sees a fact.
Right.
You go in there, you can't change, but
Mm-hmm.
what you can't change is the experience that like the thousands of black peasantry
Mm-hmm.
are having
Right.
to this very day.
Mm-hmm.
But it always comes back to you need to have you need to know you need to do
Right.
this and that and that and that and, that. And it's
And
like
then who are you? You're not.
there's
You know.
some barrier to this
Right.
conversation
Mm-hmm.
that it needs to be said a certain way, that it needs to be explained and proved a certain way,
Mm-hmm. And it has to
you
come from
know,
a
and
particular
it has
person
to
to look
come
up.
from
A particular.
it needs to
Right.
come from a place of intelligent analysis and critical
Mm-hmm.
understanding, but these are people's lives.
Right.
They're like you can't speak from a place of detachment and from just pure factual like
Yeah.
that doesn't exist.
Exist. And the fact that
And but
folk
but the
have
fact that
told you
people
this, right?
feel the need to have
Have
to
that
reach for
reach
that
back. Mm-hmm.
to even to just feel like they that they need to be intellectually perfect just to speak
Mm-hmm.
on this subject, right? It needs to be said a certain way. It needs to be couched a certain like
Right.
all these things just serve, and it's like
You're
it,
missing. Right.
and it's like
Missing
I
the
don't
point.
understand that.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I don't understand how why W.E.B. Du Bois needs to prove his validity.
Mm-hmm.
Like he was born in America as a black man,
That's right. And make no mistake, he
and
definitely
he
was.
hits
Right.
that, and he's what else? What
Right.
else do you need?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and Booker T. Washington is not an anomaly. He's not an
Correct.
exception. There are
Right.
people who think that. And
Mm-hmm.
they have the right to think whatever they want to think about
Mm-hmm.
how to deal with this situation. If
That's right.
Booker T. Washington felt like he made progress,
Mm-hmm.
felt that he pushed himself and the black people forward, and if people read that and felt,
Mm-hmm.
and were inspired to move and live a certain way because of this person, more power to
To
them.
them. Right.
We know Marcus Garvey.
Right.
Was a big fan of Booker T.
Mm-hmm.
Washington.
And Frederick Douglass. Right.
Yeah, and Frederick
Mm-hmm.
Douglass. Like to us, those two ideas are diametrically opposed.
Mm-hmm. But hey,
But hey,
but hey, right,
right?
right.
And it's like Booker T. Washington didn't need an honorary degree
Agree.
for
That's right.
whatever.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't need to set up a school. He
Right.
didn't need to do any of these things to speak on his experience.
That's right.
But he felt like he needed to have these things.
Mm-hmm.
He needed to be presented a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with Frederick Douglass.
Right.
And
And all the rest of them. Right.
all
The
the rest of them.
Right.
To this very day,
Yeah, we still do that. Right.
it's like you don't feel like you have the power to speak because you don't have the thing.
Mm-hmm.
You can't say it like this.
Right.
You can't do it like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like I don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we've been browbeaten into submission by this cold, absolutist ideal of what intellect and what the conversation is supposed to be and what it's supposed to be built
Mm-hmm.
on. And it's like Plato and Aristotle and Socrates, and all of the great philosophers of the past thought the way that they thought and explained things the way that they explained it because they felt a certain way about the world they were living in.
Mm-hmm.
That is the impetus for all of the metaphysical, Pythagorean,
Right.
perfect sphere, whatever, all the stuff you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Any way you want to couch it in, the hedonists,
Mm-hmm.
or all the it's,
Right.
all the
Right.
different philosophical
thoughts,
ideas
right.
that came
Mm-hmm.
out of that time.
Mm-hmm.
It was just people speaking and living off of what they feel.
Right.
And the only reason why they, had the words to discuss these things is because they were given, the greater stage.
Right. That's
Those
it.
the people
That's
you pay
it.
attention to the most.
Right.
Like that's the way you have to think. That's the way you have to couch your ideas.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way you have to present them. And all of these things again and again and again. And it's like that's not even what they did.
Right.
You're looking at the end result of generations of thinking and feeling and speaking.
Mm-hmm.
Of people not trying to say it any one particular way. That is a distillation, right? And it is no more true, no more factual, no greater a contribution to that feeling that you are having right now.
Right. And it's the same with
Like W.E.B. Du Bois
Mm-hmm.
and Booker T. Washington. You don't have to prove it.
Right.
And like this forethought to me is like redundant, but evidently it's
it
not.
needs to be said. Right.
Evidently it's not.
And
it's like,
and like I said, because he is writing it in that same tenor, that same vein as a slave narrative.
mm-hmm.
Like I said, I say if you don't read anything by Olaudah Equiano, just read his his opening.
Mm-hmm.
Just read that, and especially like the first paragraph going into the just read the first paragraph.
Mm-hmm.
Read the first paragraph when he opened. I mean, that's it. This is what people who look like us. This is what we have to do.
Mm-hmm.
We have to establish ourselves as human beings,
mm-hmm.
as people. Okay. Then we feel like we have to explain why it is that we feel that we have a right to even say the things that we say.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it that I have to qualify myself? I am a black man in America. I was born in the 1860s.
Mm-hmm.
You can't tell me that my experience is any less valid or more
mm-hmm.
than any other black man that was born here.
Than any other man, period.
Period. But since we're talking about
Yeah.
us, then that's what it is.
And it's
And
like,
why is it that when
I should not have to
I
copyright
should exactly
my own experience.
right
I shouldn't have
and
to codify it and couch it
right
in the right words for you to
you to
be able
understand what I'm
to
saying.
get what I'm
Right.
trying to say.
And when and as I am speaking and I'm going to write and I'm analyzing, I study. Please understand that I am a man who is doing this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? I have an issue with with Booker T. Washington and how it is that he addressed this particular situation at this moment. And I'm going to analyze it tooth and nail down to the period. And you to tell me that, well, I'm not qualified to do this because, I was born in Massachusetts. But no, I have to live in the consequences of what Booker T. Washington said as well.
Mm-hmm.
How can you tell me that I'm not qualified to analyze this? Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
Anyone is.
Anyone is. But since we're talking,
Yeah,
yes.
but it's like there's this. It's pervasive, and just in every in every school of thought, in every anytime anyone tries to analyze what our world is, what it means to us, how it relates to us, how we live, how we create our societies, and all these things, people turn to these works. They turn to like Du Bois and all this stuff, and Booker T. Washington to try to find the words.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with seeking out and trying to study and learn. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's like, don't feel the need to qualify your experience. Don't feel the need to try and say and speak in any particular manner. Say it the way it needs to be said, the way you want to say it. There are no qualifiers to this. It does not have to be empirical.
And understand something here is that W.E.B Du Bois he's not self-proclaiming himself as the leader. That's one. We can make that perfectly clear. That's not what he has done. That's not what he's done in 1903, 1923, and when he left in 1954. Like that's not him. That's not what he has done. He has never put, he hasn't put himself as the leader. That I am this, no. He hasn't done that. Other folk have. And so he addresses that. Booker T, you have put yourself out here and made yourself the leader. That's what you've done. Okay? And you gave this address. Compromise. You gave this address. And you know how I feel. That, if you have a lot of white people clapping you, then something must be wrong. I have that shit. Especially in 1901. And so here it is. Like I said, when we read it just, and I've always said this about the souls of black folk, it seems as if as Booker T. Washington is speaking, that W.E. Du Bois is writing this. And then when he gets to Booker T. Washington, I mean, just what
he has the whole chapter dedicated.
Yes, dedicated to it. And I always, but the stuff that's after it, before and it, but look, so, for me, W.E.B Du Bois, and I think I've mentioned this a few, like he is what aspiration. He's definitely one of the people that I just wish. And so that's why I feel, I continue to read, I continue to study, and I really do study. I write, I take notes, and I study, and I feel like I'm almost like I don't feel like I need to go into all of my all of my and things like that. you know. But it really does drive me insane sometimes when folk, they like to do this with W.E.B Du Bois, the just the I don't know, just the completely out of context. They do it with Booker T. Washington, especially, you know, and with Amos Wilson. It drives me insane. You know, it's are you really reading this? Are you reading for understanding? Like just to understand what these people are saying. To truth, like just to empathize and to understand where they're coming from. But no, everybody's looking for the big quote, the big whatever, and you're just taking it. It's to me, it's insulting to an Amos Wilson. It's insulting to a Booker T. Washington, to a W.E. Du Bois, or to whoever that you want.
You try to reduce it down
You're trying to reduce it down to that,
to a catchphrase,
to a meme, not not fully understanding what it is that they're trying to engage, trying to explain, trying to analyze it. Understand something here that yes, this is an analysis. It is a critique, but it's coming from it's not coming from the place of hate. It's not coming from
from any malicious.
It's not coming from that. And I think a lot of times, especially now in the 21st century, even there's so much angst. But I find your angst to be lazy because you're not doing the work. It's one of the things that Dr. Kilimanjaro talks about is that looking at our work, just being looking at it soberly for understanding, to take, what is, the best, I'll say, of a W.E.B Du Bois, of a Dr. John Henry Clark, of a Amos Wilson. Oh, just, take that and use it. It's not about, denigrating a Booker T. Washington, or denigrating a W.E.B Du Bois. These people have been dead for 50, 60, 70, 80, 100 years. Dead. Okay? And you need to do your work. That's what you need to do. Instead of trying to dig up a W.E.B Du Bois or dig up a Booker T or whoever, do your work. Study for understand, to empathize that they're men. Okay? They're men, they're great men. Mistakes are made. That's what happens because you live. But you approach it with try to approach this with understanding and with empathy versus, you're around here looking like what other kind of foolishness. I'm like, and so I feel as if you take that approach, that you will have a better understanding.
Yes, like in general of anything.
If anything.
But so okay. In conclusion, right? We are going to begin to read The Souls of Black Folks. We feel like it is perhaps the most poignant and powerful expose on the Black cultural imperative, and all the things that we're living with then and now that there has ever been. And if you want to begin to understand, from any avenue, what it is that we feel, then I think this is perhaps the best place to start.
Right.
And that's what all of this is about. It's trying to elucidate that feeling. Like you said, there's no word for it. There's no word, no statement, no sentence, no anything that is going to be able to truly expose, what this is. But it doesn't mean you don't stop trying to get closer and closer and closer. So like I said, if you want to read along, if you want to do that, then you're more than welcome to do so. And so thank you for hearing us out.
Thank you.